Well, hi, I'm Karen Maciolek Salb, and I was born in 1949 in Whitefish Bay, Wisconsin, to Harold and Caroline Maciolek. My father was a mechanical engineer and was then hired by Sandia Corporation, and we moved to Albuquerque. Grew up in Albuquerque, studied dance in Albuquerque with Krasno School of Fine Arts from the time I was 5 until I graduated, then went on to Eastern New Mexico University. So at Eastern, I had a scholarship for my first year. And then after that, I was trying to figure out how I was going to pay for my college education. And I was dating this lovely young man at the time and eventually married him. But Tom had decided that I needed to enter a pageant. Unbeknownst to me, I thought I was just going to get to perform in a contest and win some money if I was good. So I won the Miss Portales pageant and then came down to Hobbs for the Miss New Mexico pageant. And that's where my life began here in Hobbs in 1968. I won the Miss New Mexico pageant, went on to go to the Miss America pageant, won Miss Congeniality at the Miss America pageant. And then at the end of my second year in college, some of the scholarship money was starting to dwindle, and I thought, oh, I really need to figure out some way to get some more college money so that my parents wouldn't have to pay for anything. So I opened a dance studio in Portales. And in the meantime, my business manager from the Miss New Mexico pageant was here and said, there's a studio for sale. You'd be just the right person, and you'd make a good income while you're trying to finish up your college education. So I bought Carol Lloyd's Dance Studio, and for $500, which I thought was more money than I had ever seen in my life. And anyway, so for 5 years I commuted, 2 years from Portales, teaching at my studio in Portales, and then teaching here. And then Tom got accepted to the PhD program in biology at Tech after we married in 1970. So then we moved to Lubbock, and I commuted from Lubbock for 3 years to teach here, and then in 1975 we actually moved here. So. Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, being the oldest of 5, I always wore hand-me-downs. And so when Tom signed me up for this local talent show, supposedly, he said that you'll need a bathing suit, you'll need some heels, you'll need an evening gown, and you'll need a talent, outfit. And so I had the costume and the toe shoes, but I did not have an evening gown and swimsuit. So you were assigned a chaperone from local. Mrs. Slinker was Betty Slinker was my chaperone. And she said, I know a girl that wears your size. I'm going to go borrow this little dress. And it was just as cute as can be, just simple, no rhinestones. It was just a little lace layered thing, and I just thought I looked like $1 million, And then I had to have a one-piece bathing suit. Well, all I had was my little white bikini, so that wasn't going to work. So I borrowed a bathing suit from a girl who had entered the pageant the year before, and it was white. So everything I wore was white, and my costume was white too and stuff. So I entered. I worked very hard. They said, you need to start walking with your feet turned straight. You kind of walk with your feet turned out. Yeah, dancer, from the time of, okay, I guess I could work on that. So I'd walk down the hallways in the dorm with my little book on my head because I had seen in a TV show that that's what you do. So I did that, and I worked very hard. And when I did the pageant, for me it was like my whole focus was I get to dance on stage. The interview didn't even bother me because it was fun to talk to people. And doing the swimsuit and the evening gown was like pretending I was a character in a movie, so I just did that. Then when I went on to enter the Miss New Mexico pageant, I had never been to Hobbs. I did not even know where Hobbs was. So I spent my week with Mrs. Slinker in Portales, and then we came down to Hobbs, and same principle. All I knew was I just really wanted to dance, and there were 11 contestants, and they were just everybody was so good. You know, you looked at everybody and thought, oh my gosh, this is just so neat. And I, being as naive as I was, I just thought we all got money for dancing on stage. Hello. Anyway, so then I won, which surprised me. And I called my parents, and I had, you know, they didn't even come down because they weren't quite sure. They couldn't afford all this extra stuff. And my dad was constantly he was with the Atomic Energy Commission. So he was constantly being sent out on trips and couldn't come down. And my mom had 4 other kids at home. So anyway, so I called and told I won. And then I said, oh, I can't come home for 2 weeks, but I don't know why. So, but Tom was here, and Dr. Gennaro and his wife came from Portales, and they were my little rooting group in the audience. So, and then I went on to the Miss America pageant. And in those days, they didn't have preparation. You didn't do mock interviews, as you know, in Hobbs, and they didn't have you practice your modeling and all the things that you should have done, and they didn't have you working a lot in front of a television camera. So interviews were, you know, whenever you had an interview, it was an interview, and that was it. But the one thing I did do is I constantly worked on my talent, because that's how I was trained. You danced every single day of your life. You know, if you wanted to be good on stage, you had to do. And so I danced to the song Wunderbar from Kiss Me Kate. I love the waltz. And so I just, you know, I really had a good time. When I went to Atlantic City, I made friends galore. And then a year later, I found out that when I was chosen Miss Congeniality, that I was the only one who voted against myself. And it was the first time in many years that someone unanimously had been chosen. Yeah, and so it was really neat. So you did your little ballot, and then on the day of the finals, they get you on stage, and they've got all the girls, all the contestants just kind of sitting around and stuff, and then all of a sudden they're paparazzi, news people everywhere starting to flash cameras. And so we thought we were just kind of posing and stuff like that and being around. Then all of a sudden, and Miss Congeniality is, and I mean, it was like, I heard my name and it was like, really? Me? And so that was surreal. And of course, that was a nice scholarship and stuff, which helped a lot with college. But then, and from the Miss America pageant, 2 other good things have happened. I was a special guest on the Oprah Winfrey Show in Chicago as one of the last Miss Congenialities chosen. And I was recommended by Atlantic City. And that was such an honor, because I thought, oh my gosh, you know, when you leave, you sometimes think, do they ever remember these girls? Do they ever remember you? And then also I was asked to submit a recipe for the Miss America cookbook, and I'm in the first page. So it is a quesadilla made with crab and avocado and onion and cheese, and just a nice little appetizer, because I love to cook. So yeah, it's really good. But anyway, so the Miss America pageant opened many doors for me. But doors are only open if you want to go through them, you know. Everybody can have a door open, but if you decide to sit on the other side and not take that advantage, then it's not going to do any good. I was told from Bill Calgary, who was the producer and became a good friend of mine, that most girls voted for themselves. And that's why he said when I won, that was so special, because it was the first time in years that everyone had voted for one person. And I said, but I didn't vote for me. He says, I know. You voted for Miss Virginia. And I said, that's right. They're definitely changed. The Miss America pageant has really changed. it's, to me, there's just too many facets of it. It's not focused on the age level of 17 through 24. It's not focused on college education. It's more like they're looking for a girl who already has a college degree. And then they've got little junior programs coming up. So you're supposed to be a mentor to a junior girl. And then that little junior girl is supposed to be a mentor to a little pre-junior girl. And I'm not getting the connection. To me, that's too much like some of the other pageants. And I loved the Miss America pageant because it was so unique and it really focused on the intelligence of young women and furthering education. I mean, and I don't hear that as much anymore. I'm still involved a little bit. We give a donation to the Miss New Mexico pageant. And they have brought back the Miss Congeniality Award in the last 3 years. Yeah, so that's neat. So we donate to that scholarship trust, yeah. But I am married to Thomas J. Salb. He grew up in Albuquerque and was born in Washington, D.C., and has quite a past there too, his family does, and history. So Tom and I were in college together and then married in 1970. He was working on his degree with Dr. Gennaro at Eastern New Mexico University in biology, and then went on to Tech to try and get a PhD in biology. But at that time, Tech was pretty new, so they had some problems in their division and had to let those graduate students go until they could get reevaluated. So then years down the road, when Tom was, after Tess was born and when she was like 3rd grade, Tom decided the oil industry was really kind of crashing here, and he had always been interested in psychiatry, psychology. So as a family, we decided I would stay here with Tess, and then he would go on to Texas Tech if he got accepted and get his PhD in counseling psychology. So today he is the school psychologist for Lee County, and loves what he does. He wishes that he could have healthy children to work with, but he loves the work that he does to make children that do have problems healthy again. So that's where it is. And then he photographs our dance recitals, and he comes up with ideas on who I can sponsor, who I can bring in. And so we're a team. We're definitely a team. Not taking the chance to go and audition for the Carol Burnett show, yes, I do. And when I was 32 and I had my daughter and she was about 2 years old, I fell apart because that really weighed on me, that I had given up that, because I knew I was going to get the part. I mean, I had worked with the choreographer for 2 summers up at Eastern. He was a good friend of Richard Waits, who was head of the drama department. And Carl Jablonski came, and the first time he came to me, he said, "Where have you trained?" He said, "Your training is exactly like mine." Then the following summer, I was taking the workshop again. He was there for a whole month, and I was dancing with him every day and stuff. And he said, "I've got a young lady who is leaving the show. She's your size. She's got your spunk," and he said, "But your style would fit in with the Carol Burnett dancers. You're exactly what I need." And he said, "It's an open audition, but I know I want you. And so, but you have to show up at the audition August and some date and stuff like that." So Tom and I talked about it. I mean, we really did talk about it, thinking, okay, I can do this. And so he says, "Well, what are you going to do if you make it?" And I said, "What do you mean, if I make it? I know I'm going to make it." And he said, "Well, then would you just move there and leave me?" You know, because he had just started graduate school on his master's in biology. And so then I thought, oh my gosh, I guess, you know, that would not be a good thing, because I'm committed to this marriage. I am committed. And I'm committed to what we're doing, the plans that we had in our life together. So I called Carl and I said I wouldn't be coming, and he was very upset. But he understood. He understood, you know. there were 200 other dancers at the audition, so I'm sure he found somebody. So anyway, but that was a regret. Yeah, it was a regret. But I did get over it. I did, yeah. Tess took me on a ride all by herself, so I didn't have time to think about it after she turned 3. So Tom and I just felt that this was a good place to stabilize, and we were really only going to stay 10 years, till 1980, and then kind of move on, because he had been offered some really nice things through the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., and turned them down for here. And I was offered a chance to audition for Carol Burnett, and I was already married and had the studio, and I thought, I would love to do it for a year, but you can't get accepted to something like that and then just say, oh, I'm going to do it on my terms. You know, the choreographer's not going to go for that, so it was best just not to even try. But it was nice to know that they wanted me to audition. So Hobbs has just been very good for us. We had a daughter in 1979. Tess was raised here in the studio. She became a phenomenal dancer and in band. Went on to the University of Notre Dame and was an junior Olympian gold medalist in women's air pistol and a pentathlete, a nationally ranked pentathlete, and she could not have done it in any large community. Hobbs offered the availability of all those things. So Hobbs has actually enriched our lives with good friends. You, for instance, Miss Mary, you are one of my good friends and have always been an inspiration to me. But Bonnie Moran was probably one of the first people that I met. Zana Willie was my chaperone to the Miss America pageant. Dot McCormick was Dr. and Mrs. McCormick. I stayed with them. So they were some of the first people, the Antwells. And those were people that established. Then Joe and Ann Janica. And then we've had many people come into our lives, the Spinazzolas, and my church, you know, St. Helena's Catholic Church. We performed for that. I'm totally involved in that, and I love the choir. And I've actually gone to some of the other churches with other friends. That's one of the things I do like about Hobbs, is that church is it's not a separation. It's almost like it's a unity. So, I mean, there's so many things that churches do for each other. And of course we've done St. Helena's Family Fair and love to do that. Like to make candy for the family fair. And I'm learning from Bonnie Moran how to do the caramels, and I need a couple more years training though. That's a hard. And then Joyce and Joe Walker. I knew Joe and Joyce many years ago when I first started teaching here. And then she and I were on the board for the symphony, and then on the board for the Lee County Commission for the Arts. We've made, such tremendous friends. And, you know, to tell you the truth, if it had not been for Bonnie Moran, when Tess got accepted to Notre Dame, I could not figure out how we were going to pay for it. And yet she's an only child, and she had earned the right to go. And so Bonnie was my inspiration. She kept saying, you know, she said, you just need to take a step back every time and look. And she said, don't look at the big picture. Look at just getting that first semester done. You know, that first semester paid for and stuff like that. And once it's done, everything kind of falls into place. And just understand, it's a commitment, just like it was a commitment when you had your child. So she has been a great, you know, mentor in my life, and still is. And she tells me how it is. In fact, she was the first one when her daughters were in dance years ago. We used to make costumes because you couldn't order them. And she walked in one day and she said, I will pay for all the dance lessons my daughters want to take, but I am not making a costume. So she said, you better figure out how my kid's going to have a costume in the recital. So ever since then, we've been good friends and stuff. So. Okay, so the story I've been told is that the women of the oil fields a lot of them came from very nice homes and stuff like that back east in the Midwest and stuff. So their husbands would be out in the oil fields all day long. They were talking to their other guys, but the women didn't have any social. So they decided once a month that they would get together, and they would make it a short-term get together, and it was coat and tie, and they got to dress up, and they'd have nice drinks and hors d'oeuvres, but an alarm clock was set because they had promised their husbands it would just be a 2-hour social event. So the alarm clock was at 6 o'clock was set for 8 o'clock to go off. When the alarm clock went off, everybody went. Well, then down the road, the alarm clock groups, I guess, grew. So then they had to do 2 groups. And so then what they would do is from 6 until 8 was group 1, and 7 to 9 was group 2. But the alarm clock would go off then at 8 o'clock, so that the 6 to 8 o'clock group knew that they had to leave, and the 7 o'clock group was already coming in, and then the alarm clock went off again at 9 o'clock. And then so it was kind of a unique idea. Now they still have alarm clock, but there's no clock that goes off. In fact, I think sometimes I can't get people to leave when I get the clock back out again. But anyway, if I do write a book, it's going to be called, and my dance students always laugh about this, the shortest distance between 2 points is just get there. And that is my philosophy in life. That if you, if you hit an obstacle, and living in Hobbs from 1970 till now, there are obstacles. Living in Albuquerque, living in Washington, D.C., living anywhere. If you run into an obstacle and you really want that, what's ahead of you, you just take a step to the left or the right and then just get there. Just go for it. And I think that we can obtain anything in life that we want. It may take us a little longer, but if it's worth it, then continue, pursue it. And I also feel that a smaller community, a small place like Hobbs, which is not that small anymore, but it still isn't compared to some other cities, is the best place to raise a family, because opportunities are greater when you can embrace everyone around you and encompass that. So those are my 2 things.